Hello everyone. So today's session is about the formal charge calculation. First, we'll discuss what is the formula to calculate formal charge, and then we'll use a trick to calculate the formal charge of atoms in a compound or molecule. Okay. So first, use the formula to calculate the formal charge of atom in a compound or molecule. Formal charge is equal to, it is calculated by using formula. Formal charge is equal to number of valence electrons. V means what? Number of valence electrons in atom minus number of lone pair electrons minus half of shared electrons Okay, so where V stand for, V means number of valence electrons. Number of valence electrons valence electrons. L means number of lone pair electrons. Number of lone pair electrons. Lone pair electrons, and S means number of shared electrons. S means what? Number of shared electrons. Number of shared electrons. Okay. Let us apply this formula to calculate formal charge of atoms in ozone molecule. This is the formula of ozone. Let us mark the oxygen atom, which is present at extreme left as oxygen A. The oxygen which is present at middle, let us mark it as B. And oxygen which is present at extreme right, let us consider it is oxygen C. Okay. Now use this formula to calculate the formal charge on each oxygen atom. So let us find formal charge on oxygen atom. Formal charge on oxygen A. Formal charge on oxygen A is equal to, it is equal to valence electron. We know that in oxygen, number of valence electron is equal to 6 minus number of lone pair electrons. How many lone pairs are there on oxygen A? On oxygen A, number of lone pairs is equal to, there are 2 lone pairs. Means total number of electrons is equal to 4. Lone pair electrons is equal to 4 minus half of shared electrons. Shared electrons means how many bonds are there? So total number of bonds is equal to the oxygen A, total number of bonds which are associated with oxygen A is equal to 2 bonds. Means one bond, we know that each one bond consists of 2 electrons. So number of electrons associated with oxygen A in bond pairs is equal to total 4. Total 4. So number of shared electrons is equal to 4. Okay, so what is the formal charge on oxygen A? Formal charge on oxygen A is equal to 0. Similarly, find the formal charge on oxygen B. On oxygen B, number of valence electron is equal to 6 minus lone pair of electrons is equal to 2 minus half of shared electrons. Half of shared electrons, how many shared electrons are there which are associated with oxygen B? Total 3 bonds are there which are associated with oxygen B, right? So 3 bond means 6 electrons. So formal charge is equal to plus 1. Formal charge on oxygen B is equal to plus 1. Okay. Similarly, find the formal charge on oxygen C. Formal charge on oxygen C is equal to number of valence electrons 6 minus number of lone pair of electrons. Total 3 lone pairs are there in oxygen C. So number of lone pair electrons is equal to 6 minus half of shared electrons. So oxygen C, only one bond is there in oxygen C. One bond means 2 electrons. What is the formal charge? Minus 1, right? So oxygen A, formal charge on oxygen A is 0. Formal charge on oxygen B is plus 1, while formal charge on oxygen C is equal to minus 1. Okay, so we can use a trick also to find the oxidation, to find the formal charge on each oxygen atom. Now let us apply the trick. The trick is formal charge is equal to, formal charge is equal to, it is equal to number of valence electrons. Formal charge is equal to number of valence electrons, number of valence electrons, valence electrons minus number of dots, minus number of dots on atom minus number of covalent bonds, minus number of covalent bonds. So by using this trick also, we can calculate the formal charge on any atom present in a compound or molecule. For example, let us apply this trick to this same compound, oxygen A. This is oxygen A, oxygen B, and oxygen C. Lone pair electrons are given to us in the molecule. Okay, now let us find a formal charge on oxygen A. Formal charge on oxygen A. On oxygen A. Okay, so we know that number of electrons in valence shell of oxygen A is equal to 6. 6 electrons in valence shell minus number of dots on oxygen A. How many dots are there on oxygen A? Find the number of dots. How many dots are there total? Total number of dots on oxygen A is equal to 4. Okay, 4 dots are there, so 6 minus 4 minus what? Number of covalent bonds. So oxygen A is associated with the two covalent bonds. Formal charge on oxygen A is equal to 0. Okay. Similarly, formal charge on oxygen B. Oxygen B, number of electrons in valence shell of oxygen B is equal to 6 minus number of dots. How many dots are there? Minus number of dots is equal to 2, and minus how many covalent bonds are there which are associated with oxygen B. So total covalent bond is equal to 3. So formal charge is equal to plus 1. Similarly, formal charge on oxygen C is equal to, formal charge on oxygen C is equal to number of electrons in valence shell of oxygen C, 6 minus how many dots are there total? 6 minus how many bonds are there? Number of lines? 1. So formal charge on oxygen C is equal to minus 1. Okay, so by using this trick, we can easily calculate the formal charge on any atom present in a compound. Okay, so let us use the trick to calculate the formal charge of compounds, primo compounds. So first compound is given to us. Let us apply the trick to find the formal charge on nitrogen A, B, and C. So formal charge on nitrogen A is equal to by using the trick. How many electrons are there in valence shell of nitrogen A? We know that nitrogen valence shell electron is equal to 5 minus how many dots are there total? Total 4 dots are there. Total 4 dots. 5 minus 4 minus how many lines are there? How many covalent bonds which are associated with the nitrogen A? Two covalent bonds. What is the formal charge on nitrogen extreme left nitrogen atom? Formal charge is equal to minus 1. Now, similarly, find the formal charge on nitrogen B. Nitrogen B, we know that valence shell electron in nitrogen atom is equal to 5, right? So 5 valence electron minus number of dots is equal to 0. Number of dots means number of electrons on nitrogen B is equal to 0 है, minus number of covalent bonds which are associated with nitrogen B. How many covalent bonds are there total? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 lines are there, minus 4. So formal charge on central nitrogen atom is plus 1. Similarly, formal charge on extreme right nitrogen atom and NC is equal to number of electrons in valence shell. How many electrons are there in valence shell total? 5 minus number of dots. How many dots are there total? 4 dots are there minus number of lines. Number of lines 2. Okay, so formal charge on nitrogen C is equal to minus 1. Formal charge on nitrogen C is minus 1. Formal charge on central atom is plus 1. And formal charge on extreme left nitrogen atom is minus 1. Next example is methane molecule is given. In methane molecule, find the formal charge on carbon atom and formal charge on hydrogen A. So formal charge on carbon atom, formal charge on carbon is equal to number of valence electron in carbon atom is equal to 4 minus how many dots are there on carbon? No dot, so 0 minus how many bonds which are associated with carbon total? 4 bonds. 4 bonds minus 4. So formal charge on carbon atom in methane is equal to 0. Now similarly find the formal charge on hydrogen A. On hydrogen A, number of electrons in valence shell of hydrogen A, we know that number of electrons in valence shell of hydrogen A is equal to 1. How many dots are there on hydrogen A? 0 dots. And how many bonds which are associated with hydrogen A? Only single bond. So formal charge on hydrogen A is equal to 0. Okay. Similarly, we can calculate formal charges on remaining hydrogen atom. On remaining hydrogen atoms also, the formal charge is equal to 0 on each hydrogen atom in methane molecule. Next example is, in next example, formal charge on oxygen A, formal charge on oxygen A is equal to oxygen A. We know that oxygen number of electrons in valence shell of oxygen is equal to 6 minus how many dots are there total on oxygen A? Total 4 dots, right? Total 4 dots. So 6 minus 4 minus how many lines are there or how many covalent bonds associated with oxygen A? Total 2 covalent bonds. So formal charge on oxygen is equal to oxygen A is equal to 0. Similarly, formal charge on oxygen B is also equal to 0. Now find the formal charge on nitrogen. Nitrogen is equal to number of valence electron in nitrogen. We know that nitrogen 5 electrons are there in valence shell. And how many dots are there? Zero dots, right? On nitrogen, there is no electron on nitrogen in given molecule. Minus how many bonds are associated with nitrogen? Total 4. So what will be the formal charge on nitrogen? Formal charge on nitrogen is plus 1, right? So formal charge on oxygen is 0 and formal charge on the central nitrogen atom is equal to plus 1. So this is the structure of the NO2 plus ion. Next ion is given. In next ion, oxygen A, oxygen B. So let us find the formal charge on oxygen A first. Formal charge on oxygen A. Formal charge on oxygen A. In oxygen A, we know that number of electrons in valence cell. Okay, number of electrons in valence cell. How many electrons are there in valence cell? Total 6. Minus how many dots are there? 6 minus number of lines. One line is there. One line is there. So formal charge on oxygen A is equal to minus 1. Similarly, find the formal charge on nitrogen. So nitrogen, how many electrons are there in valence shell of nitrogen? We know that total 5 electrons are there in valence shell of nitrogen. Now, how many dots are there on nitrogen? 2 dots, right? So 5 minus 2 minus. Minus how many bonds are associated with nitrogen? 1, 2, and 3. Total 3 bonds are attached to the nitrogen atom. So formal charge on nitrogen is equal to 0. Now find the formal charge on oxygen B. On oxygen B, number of electrons in valence shell. How many electrons are there in valence shell in oxygen B? Total 6 electrons, right? Total 6 electrons are there in valence shell of oxygen B. Now how many dots are there on oxygen B? 4 dots are there, right? 4 dots, so minus 4 electrons minus how many bonds are associated with oxygen B? 2. So total charge is equal to 0. So actual structure is along with charges. On extreme oxygen A, there is a minus 1 charge. Nitrogen, there is a 0 charge, and oxygen B, there is a 0 charge. So the given ion is NO2 minus ion. Next example is, in next example, find the formal charges on each atom. Formal charge on sulfur. Formal charge on sulfur is sulfur. How many electrons are there in valence shell of a sulfur? Sulfur, we know that it belongs to the oxygen family. So in sulfur, number of electrons in valence shell is equal to 6, right? So number of electrons in valence shell of sulfur is equal to 6. Now, how many dots are there on sulfur total? Total dots, total electrons on sulfur, these dots is equal to as 6. Minus 6 minus number of bonds is equal to 1. So total formal charge on sulfur is equal to minus 1. Find formal charge on carbon. Carbon, number of electrons in valence shell, we know that in carbon, number of electrons in valence shell is equal to 4, right? So 4 minus, how many dots are there on carbon? 0 minus, how many bonds are associated with carbon total? Total 4 bonds. Total 4 bonds are associated with the central carbon minus 4. So formal charge on carbon is equal to 0. Then formal charge on nitrogen. Nitrogen, number of valence electron is equal to 5. Number of valence electron in nitrogen is equal to 5 minus how many dots are there? 2 dots minus how many bonds? 3 bonds are associated with nitrogen. So formal charge on nitrogen atom is equal to 0, right? Formal charge is 0. So there is a minus 1 charge on sulfur and the carbon and nitrogen, the formal charge is 0. This ion is known as what? Thiocyanato ion. This ion is known as a thiocyanato ion. Now next molecule is given. In next molecule, find the formal charge on sulfur. Formal charge on sulfur atom is equal to, on sulfur atom is equal to. How many electrons are there in valence shell of the sulfur? We know that in valence shell of sulfur, 6 electrons are there. Now, how many dots are there on the sulfur atom? Total 4 dots are there. Minus total bonds is equal to 2 bonds are there. So, formal charge on sulfur is 0. Similarly, find carbon, formal charge on carbon. Number of electrons in valence shell of carbon is equal to 4 minus no dots, no electrons for this carbon given in lone pair form. So it is 0 minus how many bonds are associated with carbon total? 4 bonds minus 4. So total formal charge on carbon is 0. Then formal charge on nitrogen, nitrogen is equal to valence shell electrons in nitrogen is equal to 5. 5 valence shell electrons are there, right? Minus how many dots are there? Total 4 dots minus total bonds associated with nitrogen is equal to 2 equal to minus 1. So formal charge on nitrogen is minus 1. This compound or this ion is known as what? Isothiocyanato ion. Isothiocyanato ion. In NH2, let us find the formal charge on nitrogen. Formal charge on nitrogen is equal to for number of electrons in valence shell of nitrogen is equal to 5 minus how many dots are there on nitrogen? 4 minus how many bonds are associated with nitrogen total? 2 bonds. So what is the formal charge on nitrogen? Formal charge on nitrogen is equal to minus 1. Formal charge on nitrogen is equal to minus 1. Okay, so this is the amide ion hai NH2 minus 1 ion. In next example, find formal charge on nitrogen. In next example, nitrogen formal charge on nitrogen atom, formal charge on nitrogen. How many electrons are there in valence shell of nitrogen? We know that there are total 5 electrons in valence shell of nitrogen atom. Minus how many dots are there on nitrogen? 0. Minus how many bonds are attached to this nitrogen atom total? 4 bonds, 4 covalent bond. So formal charge on central nitrogen atom is plus 1. Okay, so given ion is ammonium ion, NH4 plus ion. In next example, find the formal charge on oxygen A, oxygen B and oxygen C. What is the formal charge on oxygen C? Formal charge on oxygen C. Number of electrons in valence shell of oxygen 6 minus how many dots are there in oxygen C? Total 4 dots are there on oxygen C minus how many bonds are associated with oxygen C? So total 2 covalent bonds are there which are associated with oxygen C. So formal charge on oxygen C is equal to 0. Similarly, find the formal charge on oxygen A. Formal charge on oxygen A is equal to number of electrons in valence shell is equal to 6 minus how many dots are there in oxygen A? 6 dot minus number of bonds associated with oxygen A is equal to 1 bond. So formal charge on oxygen A is equal to minus 1. Similarly, find formal charge on oxygen B. On formal charge on oxygen B is equal to number of electrons valence shell 6 minus number of dots on oxygen B is equal to 6 minus number of bonds is equal to 1. So formal charge on oxygen B is equal to minus 1. Find formal charge on nitrogen atom, central nitrogen atom. On central nitrogen atom, number of electrons in valence shell of nitrogen is equal to 5 minus how many dots are there in the nitrogen? 0 minus total bonds is equal to 4. 4 covalent bonds are given which are associated with nitrogen. So formal charge on central nitrogen is plus 1. Okay, so assign charges to these atoms. Nitrogen plus 1 charge, oxygen minus 1, oxygen B also minus 1 and oxygen C is equal to 0. Next molecule find a formal charge on boron. Formal charge on boron is equal to, in boron, we know that boron belongs to group 13 and number of valence electron in group 13 is equal to 3. So boron number of valence electron is equal to 3 minus how many dots on boron? 0 and number of bonds, covalent bonds associated with boron is equal to 4 minus 4 formal charge is equal to minus 1. Formal charge on boron is minus 1. Next question is carbon suboxide. In carbon suboxide, find the formal charge of carbon A, carbon B, and carbon C. Formal charge on carbon A, formal charge on carbon A is equal to number of electrons in valence shell of carbon. In valence shell of carbon, 4 electrons are there. minus number of dots on carbon is 0 minus how many bonds are attached to the carbon A, total 4 minus 4, so formal charge on carbon A is equal to 0. Similarly, find formal charge on carbon B. Number of electrons in valence shell of carbon B is equal to 4 minus how many dots are there on carbon B? 0 minus bonds attached to carbon B is equal to 4, formal charge is equal to 0. Similarly, find formal charge on carbon C. Carbon C, number of electrons in valence shell 0, right? Minus number of dots on carbon 0 minus number of bonds attached to the carbon C, number of bonds, how many bonds are attached to carbon C? Total 4, right? So formal charge on carbon C is equal to 0. Next molecule, find formal charge on nitrogen atom. Formal charge on nitrogen atom is equal to number of electrons in valence shell of nitrogen is equal to 5, right? Minus 5 minus how many dots are there on nitrogen? 0. Number of dots 0 minus how many bonds attached to nitrogen? Total 4 bonds. 4. So formal charge on central nitrogen is plus 1, right? Then find formal charge on oxygen A. Formal charge on oxygen A is equal to number of electrons in valence shell of oxygen 6 minus how many dots are there on oxygen? Total 6 dots are there. 6 dots on oxygen minus number of bonds is equal to 1. So formal charge on oxygen A is equal to minus 1. So nitrogen formal charge plus 1 and oxygen minus 1. Next question, formal charge on each oxygen atom in carbonate ion is. In this question, the structure is not given to us. So if the structure is not given, then find average formal charge. Now how to calculate average formal charge? Formal charge on oxygen atom, formal charge on oxygen atom in carbon oxygen bond is. Carbon oxygen bond is. In carbonate ion, we know that two oxygen carry minus one charge and remaining one oxygen there is no charge. So what is the total charge here? Total charge is equal to minus 2. Total charge on oxygen atom. Total charge on oxygen atoms, total charge on oxygen atoms divided by total number of oxygen atoms, total number of oxygen atoms. So what is the total charge on oxygen atom? Total charge on oxygen atom is minus 2, and how many oxygen atoms are there? Total 3, right? So formal charge is equal to minus 0.67. Formal charge on each oxygen atom in carbonate ion is equal to minus 0.67. In next question, phosphate ion is given. In phosphate ion, here also we can use similar type of formula. So total, what is the formal charge on oxygen atom? Formal charge on oxygen atom in phosphorus oxygen bond. In phosphorus oxygen bond is equal to what is the total charge on oxygen? Total charge on oxygen atoms is minus 3, and how many oxygen atoms are there? Total 4, right? So total charge, the formal charge is equal to minus 0.75. Minus 0.75 is a formal charge, average charge on each oxygen atom in phosphate ion. In next question, sulfate ion is given. Formal charge on the oxygen atom of sulfur oxygen bond is. So here, charge on the sulfate ion is minus 2. So total charge on oxygen atom is minus 2 divided by how many oxygen atoms are there? 4. So formal charge is equal to minus 1 by 2. Minus 1 by 2. Minus 1 by 2 is a formal charge on each oxygen atom in sulfate ion.